Russia-Ukraine war latest news. After Kursk raid humiliates Putin, U.S. quietly supports Ukraine. Ukraine's surprise foray into Russian territory has embarrassed Russian President Vladimir Putin, scrambled the Kremlin's military strategy, and seized significant areas of ground along the border, prompting Washington to praise Kyiv. In an interview Wednesday, Senator Richard Blumenthal, Democrat Connecticut, who met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine earlier this week, said the failure to defend Russia is equivalent to the catastrophic breakdown that drove Russia to retreat 2.5 years. "I imagine Putin is tremendously angry," Blumenthal said. "Command, surveillance, battling, and determination failed." He said Ukraine's forces performed extremely ably in Russia, crossing mined and heavily fortified areas and synchronizing their artillery and ground forces, a U.S. military trait that Ukraine has struggled to learn. Blumenthal remarked, "It's not just kind of a stunt, it's a serious military operation that's been really wonderfully conducted, and extremely brave and bold in concept. Its strategic goal is to deflect Russian might from the east, although whether it succeeds is unclear." Blumenthal believes the Biden administration has been leery of expanding the war and may have opposed the strike if given the chance. He thinks Ukraine's operation has impressed and a little bit taken aback U.S. military authorities because they have done it so well. Michael McCall, Republican Texas, praised Ukrainian military but criticized the Biden administration for being too cautious in aiding Ukraine. "I think it's a message from the Ukrainians. Look, if you give us everything we need to win, we can win," he said in an interview. Representative Jimmy Panetta, one of several U.S. lawmakers who visited Kyiv and Odessa last week, supported Ukraine's cross-border operation to tie up Russian forces, shame the Kremlin, and win public support. He stated Ukrainian officials didn't tell lawmakers about the operation on this visit. He stated in an interview, "Clearly, it's a morale booster for Ukraine, for the Ukrainian people, especially based on this horrible kind of slog of a summer they were going through. It shows that they can fight and put up an offensive to give the West faith in their support." President Joe Biden told reporters on Tuesday that Ukraine's intrusion into Russian territory has put Moscow in a bad spot, but the U.S. is talking to Kyiv. Biden added, "It's creating a genuine challenge for Putin, and we've been in direct, constant contact with the Ukrainians. I'll say nothing else about it while it's active." On reports that U.S. weapons were deployed in the incursion against Russian targets, State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel punted at today's briefing. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre repeated today that the U.S. did not plan the attack. New professions of support follow as Ukraine's attack proceeds. Ukraine has taken control of dozens of villages in Kursk, and Kyiv officials announced today that their force has continued to grab more Russian land, making the Kursk assault the greatest foreign military invasion into Russia since World War II, military specialists say. Ukraine fired missiles and drones at Russian air sites late Wednesday. Putin suffered his second big military humiliation this summer with the incursion. Prigozhin and his Kremlin-backed Wagner group temporarily marched on Moscow last year to demand Sergei Shoigu's ouster. Prigozhin ended the brief rebellion before his Wagner mercenaries reached Moscow, but it was the biggest danger to Putin's rule in almost 2 decades. Zelensky initially linked the Kursk invasion to the 2000 Kursk submarine catastrophe, which killed all 118 Russian Navy personnel on board. "We see Russia's actual movement under Putin." On Monday, Zelensky claimed the Kursk accident symbolically began his administration 24 years ago. "And now we can see his end, and it's Kursk. Russia caused war to others and now it is coming home," Zelensky said. The Russian opposition has also used the Kursk incursion to attack Putin and his leadership, while maintaining a delicate balance to avoid glorifying Russian troop deaths. This week, top Navalny aide Ivan Zhdanov posted a horrific video of scores of dead Russian troops in Kursk on social media. He wrote, "The country's leadership are merely incompetent idiots." The prisoner swap freed Russian opposition leader Ilya Yashin this month, who urged mothers of conscripts to persuade their sons to leave the army in a telegram post. "Save your children," wrote Yashin. "Call conscripts, help them mentally. Get them out of this horror and save their lives," he said. The push also bolstered Kyiv. In his daily war briefing on Tuesday, Zelensky said hundreds of Russian servicemen had surrendered to Ukrainian forces, replenishing Kyiv's exchange fund for future prisoner swaps. Zelensky wants Washington to support Ukraine more after its triumphs. Our Ukrainian drones operate perfectly, but they can't do everything. We need missile weapons, Zelensky declared Wednesday. We continue working with our partners on long-term Ukraine decisions. The braver our partners' decisions, the less Putin can do, he said. Washington may assist Zelensky in September when Congress reconvenes. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican South Carolina, dubbed Ukraine's military operations in Kursk and Belgorod bold, brilliant and beautiful and urged Kyiv to keep it up in Kyiv earlier this week. Graham also urged the U.S. to give them weaponry they need to win a war they can't lose. McCall also said Ukrainian successes would boost U.S. military aid. I told Zelensky, you need some victories, he added. Victory is vital for the American people's psyche because we adore backing winners and winning horses. Putin has killed tens of thousands of Russians in a senseless vanity war, expanded NATO including along a giant border with Finland, allowed coup plotters to reach the outskirts of Moscow, and now allowed Russia to be invaded for the first time since 1941, said former U.S. Ambassador to Russia Michael McF. Maybe it's time for Russians to rethink whether Putin is good for their security, McFall said.